In the last mini-movie, we saw that noun phrases have nouns as heads, and we suggested earlier that all of the major categories that we looked at in the first section when we were looking at words, namely nouns, verbs, adjectives, prepositions, all of those can be heads of their own phrases. So let's look at one of the phrases that we looked at which can sit inside a noun phrase, namely the adjective phrase. Clearly, adjective phrases are going to have adjectives as their heads. So let's look at some examples. If we were to think about which of these two words is the head of that phrase, then we've got a choice, quite or old. Old is an adjective and quite is an adverb. Well, old has older and oldest, so it's an adjective. Which of those is the head? Quite is telling us more about old. Old is not telling us more about quite. So quite is a modifier and old is the head. A phrase, quite old, is an adjective phrase. Moderately expensive, it's expensive that's the head of moderately expensive. Moderately is telling us more about expensive, it's telling us how expensive, and we could strip it off and still have the same basic concept, namely expensive. Here's a much longer case, quite moderately long in the arms. Which of these is the head? Well, quite moderately is a phrase. Quite is telling us about moderately. And in the arms is also itself a phrase. It's a prepositional phrase. Both of them are telling us about long. Quite moderately tells us how long, and in the arms is telling us where whatever it is long. It might be a shirt, for example, that's long in the arms, or a person. So in the arms is telling us about the long. So long is the head. If we were drawing a tree diagram of this, then the rules are the same. We start with the head and draw up to the top node of the tree. Old is the adjective and it's the head, so adjective phrase goes to the top. Quite is a modifier, so it goes underneath the adjective phrase. It's a degree adverb, and as an adverb it's also head of its own phrase. Well, what happens with the complicated cases? Well, here's the complicated case. It's actually not as frightening as all that. The adjective is the head, long, so this is an adjective phrase, and we go right to the top of the phrasal tree, and we have two other phrases, one on the left and one on the right. In order not to confuse the issue, forget about what's on the right and just look at quite moderately all by itself. Quite is telling us about moderately, so moderately is the head of that particular phrase. It's an adverb, so let's call it an adverb phrase, and let's have quite as a modifier. On the other side, the preposition is the head of the phrase, and so we've got a prepositional phrase, and on its right we have a noun phrase, because arms is the head of that, and it has a determiner. We've already looked at noun phrases, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. The rule here is to do them one by one, find the head first, then find the modifiers, and look at them one by one. So we've already seen what the modifiers are. The modifiers are adverb phrases, including degree adverbs, which sit out on the left, and prepositional phrases, which sit out on the right of the head. Well, adjective phrases have an interesting property which has been noticed for a very long time. You can have them sitting in front of a noun as modifiers of the noun, but you can also have them sitting on the right-hand side of the noun in a particular construction called predicate position. Normally these are called predicate adjectives and attributive adjectives, but in fact these are adjective phrases and these are positions for adjective phrases. Let's look at the difference. Here's an adjective, red, head of its own phrase, and there's nothing else there, so it sits right in front of the noun, and So it's a modifier of it, the red sky, and we could have a number of other adjectives there, but there'd be sequencing restrictions on their order. If we said that the sky was also, say, dark, a red dark sky wouldn't be nearly so good as a dark red sky. There are sequencing restrictions. There's another sequencing restriction which we saw with the long in the arm case. Let's suppose that we have a shirt with long arms. So we can say it's a long shirt, but we can't say it's a long in the arms shirt. However sensible that may be from a semantic point of view, it doesn't work. We can't say a long in the arm shirt. Adjective phrases in attributive position are cut off at the head. There's nothing on the right hand side. That's not true of predicate position. The sky is red, the sky is dark and red, the sky is red and dark, the shirt is long in the arms. All of those sequencing restrictions don't apply in predicate position. So let's have a look at an application. If you were describing someone, then you might be tempted to use adjectives. Because of their constraints in attributive position, you'd be tempted to use the predicate position because then you're freer in your choice. Let's have a look at this case of an Icelandic warrior described in Njála Saga, the story of Níl. Warriors play an important role in these family stories in medieval Iceland, partly because in medieval Iceland people fought rather a lot, and warriors were important in making sure that feuds between families carried on for a good long time. Not only did that make a good story, but it meant that there were plenty of murders on the way. This is the first time this particular warrior is introduced, and all the adjectives are in predicate position. He was tall, strong, and skilled in arms, even-tempered and very shrewd, ruthless with his enemies, and always reliable in matters of importance. Look at what the saga teller has got out of putting all these in predicate position. First of all, he's able to say tall, which is a physical attribute, just a straight dimension, and strong, another physical attribute. Skilled in arms, well, you couldn't put that in attributive position because skilled in arms has something after the head which is skilled. This is not, strictly speaking, a physical attribute. It's a learned attribute. Even-tempered, very shrewd. These are mental attributes. Ruthless with his enemies, always reliable in matters of importance. These are social attributes. Ruthless, reliable. If you're having a feud, it's nice to know that the person who you call upon is ruthless with his enemies, and it's also good to know that he's always reliable when there's fighting to be done, which is what matters of importance were in medieval Iceland. So how good are we at finding adjectives? Here again we have an extract from a novel in which someone is being introduced. He was a very hard man. Hard, predicate position. Big, rather clumsy looking, predicate position. Big, heavy bones, big, heavy, attributive position, two of them. Long, flat muscles, two adjective phrases, both in attributive position. He had a big, expressionless, broken-nosed face, three of them in attributive position. Yet he moved with surprising ease. Surprising here is an adjective, and silence, as well as having a gift for stillness. Notice that the adjectives play a very important role, and they're balanced. Some of them are in attributive position, some of them are in predicate position. Some are singles, some are doubles, and finally a big, expressionless, broken-nosed face is three in a row, and then we know that we've kind of got to the end of the description. As far as adverb phrases go, we're not going to pay much attention to them because in structural terms they're very much like adjective phrases. They have an adverb as a head, of course, and the rest of it, the bits either side, very much like adjective phrases. And what we're going to do is together just label them as AP. Occasionally I'll draw attention to some of the differences, but I'm not going to make a big fuss about it.